So today we're talking about a story that's, well, it's tragic, but it's also deeply human. It's about a life, a dream, and a voice that was silenced way too soon. Let's get into it. When a story like this breaks, you see the headlines, you see the hashtags, but behind all of that was a real person, a young man with his whole life ahead of him. So that's the real question we're asking today. Who was Didarul Islam? And to really get the full weight of what was lost, we have to start at the beginning. We need to look at the life he was building and all the promise that it held. Didarul's journey, it's a story so many of us can connect with, right? He grew up in Bangladesh with these really strong family values, a deep sense of integrity. And then, in his early 20s, he did something incredibly brave. He moved to the United States, all in pursuit of that classic dream, the dream of opportunity, of a better future. He settled in, ready to build a whole new life. But that's just the timeline, right? The real picture comes from the people who actually knew him. And to them, he was so much more than just a face in the crowd. They describe him as kind, as curious, and just incredibly driven. He really wanted to build something meaningful, not just for himself, but for his family back home. And that's what makes this next part so incredibly hard to talk about, because that dream he was so carefully, so passionately building, it was just suddenly and violently cut short. So what happened next is just stark. On what should have been a totally normal day, Didarul's entire pursuit of a better life came to a tragic end. And just so you know, we're keeping the specific date general here, mainly out of respect for his family and because these kinds of cases can be ongoing. The news was just unthinkable. Didarul Islam was killed, and the impact was immediate. It was devastating. It sent these shockwaves not just through his community in the US, but all the way across the globe to his family in Bangladesh. There's this one quote from a friend that it really sums up how senseless this all felt. And it's something you hear over and over. He wasn't out there looking for trouble. He was, like his friend said, just trying to live a better life. And that's what's so jarring, right? The absolute disconnect between this brutal act of violence and the simple, peaceful dream he was chasing. But the story doesn't go quiet here. In fact, it's the opposite. The aftermath sparked this incredibly powerful response from a community that was in pain and, frankly, demanding answers. So you have the official process kick in, right? An investigation gets launched, suspects are identified. But look at that third step. For the community on the ground, that was the reality. Justice felt so far away, uncertain. And for a lot of people, it was just deeply, deeply unsatisfying. And that feeling, that frustration and uncertainty, it lit a fire. It fueled this amazing grassroots response. This wasn't just a police case anymore. No way. It became a public rallying cry. You had candlelight vigils, hashtags exploding online. His story was shared thousands and thousands of times. The community was basically saying, we will not let him become just another statistic. And this quote from a community leader, wow, it just cuts right to the heart of that frustration. The feeling wasn't just about this one tragedy anymore. It was bigger. It was this growing belief that the very systems that are supposed to protect people, to deliver justice, that in his case, they had completely and utterly failed. And that's how a deeply personal tragedy transforms into a powerful public symbol. Suddenly, Didarul's story wasn't just his own. It started to represent something much larger, a really troubling truth about the kind of vulnerability immigrants can face, even in the very place they came to looking for opportunity and safety. But here's the thing. Didarul's story doesn't just end with tragedy. It can't. It continues. It lives on in the ongoing fight for justice and in the really powerful way he's remembered. If there's one thing to take away from all of this, it's something so simple but so important. We all see these headlines every single day. They flash by on our screens, but we have to remember that behind every single one, there's a real person, a whole life packed with the same hopes, the same struggles, the same dreams that we all have. And that's why his legacy is really about a choice.
It's a conscious choice made by the people who loved him to focus on the vibrant life he lived, not on the violent way he died. So he's remembered for who he was, a dreamer who crossed an entire ocean, a son who made his family so proud, and a friend who was kind and just full of drive.
So, yeah, his memory is still inspiring that fight for justice. But it also leaves all of us, with a pretty big question. It really asks something of us. How do we make sure that a story like Didarul's moves us past just remembering? How does it actually push us to act? That's the real challenge, and it's a question I think we all need to sit with.